Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video, the fourth installment in a series that did not start all that long ago, but has been really enjoyed by you guys, which is awesome, and that is 25 things the English dub changed or censored, this time during the Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal anime. I have already done this list for Duel Monsters GX 5Ds, and it was only fitting that we tackle Zexal next, the third spin-off and fourth installment in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime franchise. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal certainly had so many alterations from sub to dub, and I will do my best to cover the ones that I found particularly interesting. From deleted scenes, altered character backstories, and classic 4Kids censorship. In no particular order, here are 25 things that the English dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal changed or censored. Without further ado, I hope you all enjoy. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal actually holds the honor of the first spin-off series to have all of its episodes dubbed in English. Since we can't begin with any non-dubbed season like we did with GX and 5Ds, let's start this list by trying to name some of the character names that were changed from the original to the dub. Kotari was changed to Tori, Tetsu was changed to Bronk, Ryogah was changed to Reginald, Kaito was changed to Kite, Hadato to Heart, 3 to Trey, 4 to Quattro, V to Quinton, Tron to Vetrix, Akari to Kari, Takashi to Caswell, Gauche to Nistro, Droit to Dextra, Durbe to Dumon, Mizael to Mizar, and as always, I am sure there are a few I missed, but those are some of the more major ones that came to mind. Like most Yu-Gi-Oh! Dubs, there were a bunch of deleted scenes throughout this show, but some were more impactful than others. Maybe one of the most notable and boggling ones that the dub cut out was the conversation between Shark and Four shortly after their duel ended. Shark had defeated Four and discussed life and a bunch of other things briefly before Four passed away. This was one of my favorite scenes in the show, just seeing Four give his final farewell words to his greatest rival and giving one last plea to everyone before he passed on never fails to give me chills. You can even see the life leave his eyes right before his body is absorbed and he whittles away. However, the dub completely cut out any trace of this scene. Not sure why they felt the need to get rid of such a good closure scene for this rivalry and for these characters, but it is what it is. I guess we will stick with the Arclight family for this one. Shortly after Four's death in the Barry and Onslaught arc, his brothers also joined him in the afterlife. 3 and V were dueling Mizael in a 2-on-1 duel. Right before Mizael defeated them, both brothers, especially 3, had farewell words to Yuma, who was watching on with tears in his eyes. Much like the conversation between 4 and Shark was deleted in the dub, this conversation was also nowhere to be found. I am assuming these deleted scenes were because 4Kids wanted these scenes to sting a little less for the viewer, but these are death scenes. They're extremely emotional scenes. They're supposed to sting. That's what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! So by taking away characters' final words, it just takes away from the scene, in my opinion at least. But yeah, the whole Arclight family got the short end of the stick in the English dub. In episode 14, there was a scene of Kaito holding the card Photon Wind, in which it appears he is flipping off Yuma since his middle finger is sticking out. Honestly, this is something myself nor 99% of viewers would have ever noticed, but leave it to 4Kids to take issue with this. As you can see on screen, they changed it so that it looks like Kaito's index finger is also in front of the card. This also begs the question on how it's physically possible for him to even hold the card in this position, but I guess illogicalness triumphs controversy, even though again, 99% of viewers, including myself, would have never noticed this. Staying in this episode, the reason Kaito did not win this duel and take the soul of our main protagonist Yuma was because his brother Haruto collapsed. Kaito immediately cancels the duel and rushes to check on his younger brother. In the original, we see a scene of Haruto screaming in pain, then falling to the ground with tears rolling down his face. The dub alters this a little bit, cutting back to the duel right as Haruto was falling, making for a quick 5-second deleted scene. Both versions then show Kaito seeing his brother collapsed on the ground, so this one isn't a crazy edit, but it's still weird that the dub would decide not to show the full scene of Haruto collapsing, especially since they kept in Kaito seeing his brother passed out seconds later. In episode 19, a pretty hilarious scene is cut from the dub. Caswell and Flip are gushing over Kotari's mother, talking about her mature beauty and how she must represent what Kotari will look like when she grows up. Kotari then turns around and shoots both of them a dirty look. They then look at Tetsu's mother and are horrified at her appearance, saying DNA can also be a horrible thing. This brief 20-second exchange is completely removed in the dub, probably because judging someone solely based off their looks is never a smart life decision. Still, it is a pretty funny scene. Earlier in that same episode, we see a flashback of Yuma's parents traveling through the mountains. They get caught up in a wicked blizzard, and Yuma's dad falls off the mountainside and his rope is being clung onto by his wife, Yuma's mother. Kazuma realizes that his wife isn't going to let go or be able to hang on to him much longer before she plunges to her death as well. He decides to win the Husband of the Year award and begins cutting his rope with a knife, yelling to his wife that he wants her to live and that is his hope. He then falls to his apparent death in the abyss of the mountains. The scene of Kazuma cutting the rope and then falling into the abyss is, you guessed it, removed in the dub. While it is still heavily implied that he cut the rope and fell, I am not sure why 4Kids chose not to just show it. Sometimes these minor 2-second cuts are more annoying than full scene deletions because they are so close to just leaving it alone, yet they still feel the need to meddle with the scene for some reason. Let us shift to an arc that was extremely censored, and that is the Baryon Onslaught arc, the final 20 or so episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, beginning with our favorite villain, Vector. Vector's backstory and past was extremely messed up, but was different based on which version you are referring to. In the original version, Vector lost his mind and slaughtered his own people, revealing this information during his duel against Shark. However, the dub changed this so that he exiled his own people instead. Remember in the last segment we realized that when the dub says kidnapped or exiled, it's safe to assume that they were killed in the original version? Well, yes, it looks like that rule of thumb holds true for Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal as well. Staying on the topic of Vector, one of the more brutal scenes was watching his dad attempt to kill him when he was a young boy. His dad ran up to him with a sword and slashed at him, only for Vector's mom to jump in the way and take the brunt of the hit. She then died in her son's arms as Vector's dad succumbed to a heart attack. To see both of his parents killed instantaneously like this was definitely messed up and immediately made the viewer realize why he is the way he is. However, the way the dub did this was just flat out confusing. They cut the scene of his dad slashing at him, so his mother just randomly appears shielding Vector while struggling to stand. His dad then collapses and Don Thousand appears. It's never explicitly stated in the dub that his parents were killed, much like it was in the original, but still, just go back and watch this dubbed scene because in my opinion, it's one of the most poorly edited scenes in any of the dubs. In the middle of Shark and Four's duel, Shark has a flashback to a moment of him and his sister discussing things. His sister Rio wonders if he will be able to fight against Yuma and carry out the goals of the Baryons. Shark screams that he will be able to, and throws his pendant into the abyss, which basically symbolized him severing his ties with humanity and becoming a full-blown Baryon. This was a scene that really made it clear to the viewer that the Shark we watched for the last 2.5 years was no longer with us, and that he was going to be a real thorn in the side for our heroes going forward. However, in the dub, this scene never happened, and in my opinion, definitely remains one of the more unnecessary scene deletions in the entire dub. Staying on the topic of Rio and Shark scenes, there was another emotional scene between these two that was entirely removed from the dub. As Shark was forced to watch Vector defeat and ultimately kill his best friend Derbe and his sister Rio, there was a short but extremely tear-jerking goodbye scene between Shark and his sister. They have a brief conversation together right before she passes, and they even show a memory of her and her brother smiling in a serene meadow. There was always something about this scene that really got me. Just one of the more pure, sadder scenes in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show. Unfortunately, if you have only seen the dub, you never got to experience this scene since it was unexplainably completely removed from the English dub. Vector was not the only Baryon who had a tragic backstory. Misael also had a pretty sombering one. Misael defended his dragon until the end, and was even willing to sacrifice his own life to protect his dragon. In his flashback during his duel against Kaito, we see arrows that have slayed his dragon and have punctured him. These arrows were completely removed in the dub, as you can see from the image on screen. Now, what did I just talk about earlier? If the dub uses the term kidnapped or exiled, it means death in the original. Well, this is not only true for Vector's kingdom, but it is also true for Misael's parents. Misael's village got raided in the past, and everyone was slaughtered, including his mom and dad. However, the dub went out of their way to state that the people who raided his village kidnapped his parents instead of killing them. If any of you are watching the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, I cannot wait to hear about how the Zaizen's parents were kidnapped or taken away in the dub, since this rule is literally 99% foolproof. Dub kidnapping equals death. Staying on the topic of Baryons, Alito also follows the same rule I've been so adamant on in this video. In episode 103, Alito has a brief flashback of his past life. He was a legendary gladiator who was eventually persecuted after he was framed for a crime he did not commit. This is where his backstory differs between versions. In the original, Alito was sentenced to execution, and there is actually a scene where you can see him about to be executed. This barbaric ritual was cut from the dub, along with the idea of execution. Instead, the gladiator of legend was exiled. I know, big shock. Speaking of Alito, when he first ran into Yuma and a group of friends, he became instantly smitten with Kaito in episode 80. He bumps into her and immediately has an image in his mind of her being an angel as she takes his hand. This scene is pretty funny, but was oddly removed in the English dub. Alito is best known for his brawling style dueling. I should make note that there were multiple occasions where physical violence was removed in the dub, as per every 4Kids dub. Some examples of this was Kaito punching Yuma in episode 54, and Fender punching Garag directly in the face in episode 74. There were, I'm sure, dozens of these quote-unquote violent scenes that were removed, but naming all of them would be monotonous. If you have any in mind that stood out to you, please feel free to leave them down below. Another aspect that usually gets censored is blood. Throughout all Yu-Gi-Oh shows, whenever blood is shown, it is almost always censored out. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal was no different. Two examples I can think of are Alito in his flashback during episode 103, and Kaito during Droid's flashback in episode 54. Just like the previous one, I am sure there are dozens of scenes containing blood that were removed by the dub, but I do not want to bore you guys by listing all of them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually showed a legit on-screen kiss? What? That's right, the only one I can think of in any Yu-Gi-Oh! An on-screen kiss happened in episode 32. Well, if you watch the original, since the dub completely removed the kiss, as they always remove any signs of romance. At the end of the episode, Yuma's older sister, Kari, kisses the gambler dude, Charlie, or really the other way around, since she slaps him across the face seconds after he kisses her. He walks away, and she is clearly flustered by the whole experience. Again, to dub-only viewers, the show still has never shown an on-screen kiss, since this was excluded from the dub. Let's talk about some fan service for a little bit. 4's first duel against Tetsu and Caswell was extremely censored in the dub. Really, all of 4's duels and monsters were pretty changed in the dub due to the horrific attack nature of his deck. His deck reminded me a lot of Bakura's in terms of the creepy nature of the monsters. The attack of his monster, Giant Killer, was removed in the dub, since in the original, it literally tore apart whatever monster it attacked, similar to a paper shredder. Quickly followed was a scene in which he summoned a monster from his graveyard. In the original, a tombstone with the name Babyface appeared, where the monster was revived. However, the tombstone was removed in the dub. After Bronk and Tetsu are defeated, tombstones with their faces on them rise from the ground, which is also removed in the dub. This could have been 3 different things, but for fan service sake, I decided to bundle them into a 3-for-1 deal. I hope you guys don't mind. Comparing 4 to Bakura in terms of deck monsters is definitely fair in my opinion. In the original, Bakura's Dark Necrofear was censored very heavily in the dub. In episode 42, 4 summons Gimmick Puppet Dreary Doll in his duel vs. Yuma and Kaito. This monster is truly nightmare fuel, and the summoning of it was completely removed in the English dub. Moreover, as you can see on screen, the design of this monster was heavily changed as well. I personally am not sure how I feel about this censor in particular. I didn't really mind it when they removed the Chucky doll from Dark Necrofear in the original show, but I don't know. I feel like these censors are easier to get behind, much easier for me to support than changing a storyline or character motivations, but still, I guess it's a pretty gray area for me personally. Both versions contain one of the more disturbing death scenes in the show. In episode 123, Mr. Heartland burns to death after losing a duel. The only difference is in the original, his screams are much more intense and prolonged than they are in the dub. The dub cuts about 80% of this sequence to make it seem like a much quicker death than it actually was. Hey, at least they showed this on screen and didn't cut it entirely. That's definitely a step in the right direction for 4Kids. The purpose of Orbital 7 varies between the sub and the dub. In the original, Kaito announces during his moon duel with Misael that Orbital 7 was built for one reason and for one purpose: to sacrifice himself if Kaito or Haruto need to be protected. Orbital really played a vital part in keeping Kaito alive throughout the duel with Misael, and this conversation is what prompted him to take action in terms of risking his robotic life to help Kaito. However, this purpose was never stated in the dub, leaving a dub-only viewer in the dark about why Orbital 7 was built. Of course, it's not that hard to put the pieces together, but I guess the dub didn't want to state straight up that Orbital's only purpose is to keep Kaito and Haruto alive, even though that is the truth of Orbital 7. Speaking of the moon duel, one of the saddest deaths in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion is Kaito's death shortly after his duel against Misael. The death is handled pretty differently between the two versions. In the original, Kaito is much more accepting of his death, telling his father he has no regrets. While in the dub, he tells his father that he just has a few nicks, and he tells Yuma that he'll be fine. The dub really shied away from showing any signs that Kaito was going to die, including removing the visor readout that said operational system shut down. They then removed the scenes after Kaito's death of Yuma remembering him and Kaito's journey up until that point. It's definitely a shame to see one of the most impactful scenes in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal censored so heavily in the dub. Shameful, but certainly not surprising. Much like the attack scenes that were cut during most of 4's duels, another attack scene that was removed in the dub was in episode 87. Garag's number monster attacks Utopia and drills his hand into Utopia, which was removed in the dub. One of the coolest things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is seeing the animation of the monsters attacking each other, because it just adds to the realism that these monsters are living, breathing creatures. So to see the dub cut out so many cool attack animations is definitely a bit annoying. Last but not least, I had to touch on it. Yuma's catchphrase was changed from sub to dub. In the original, he was all about bringing it to him and showing off his Katabingo spirit, which is just basically a made-up word to represent his never-give-up attitude. The catchphrase was changed in the dub to, "I'm feeling the flow," and "I'm gonna high-five the sky." I'm sorry. I did this last on the list in hopes that most people would have clicked off the video by now. But seriously, Yuma is so much more tolerable in the original than he is in the dub. Please, this is my late video plea to give the sub a chance if you drop the show because of the dub. Well, I guess that wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I apologize for the cringe at the end there. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope you leave your thoughts down below. Let me know if you guys think Zexal has the worst English dub. In my opinion, it does, but hey, at least they saw it out until the end and dubbed the entire show, unlike GX and 5Ds. I will not be doing one for Arc 5 until after the dub comes to an end. I might make more parts for each of these shows in the future, but for now, I'm going to take a break from this miniseries since I have a lot more top lists I want to make and talk to you all about. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support. I'll talk to you down below, and I'll see you next time. Have an amazing day. 今過去未来も僕らが願っている夢の宝掴み取る